beginning, I'll work with anybody, regardless of party or any other difference, if you're willing and really, truly committed to doing those things. But at the same time, as people that know me, I think will tell you, if you mess with my people, and I consider you all my people, however you voted, I will also fight you to the end of the earth if you do anything to make our community less affordable, which unfortunately we're seeing a lot of that right now, less safe, and certainly less free. So we're in a really tough moment. We're in a tough moment, but I'm trying to keep those guideposts, and again, welcome your feedback and you holding me accountable certainly to those things and other things that are important to you all. So I want to just talk about each of those three things quickly. I also am going to talk about some things that are harmful that I think we clearly need to be against, but I want to start in each of those areas with what I think our country should be for. There's a lot of things to be against right now, but I think it's so important to articulate what we're for, what we want to build, the future that we want to work towards. Certainly, as I think about my now 3- and 5-year-old, almost 6-year-old, what we want to build for them in all of our communities. So starting with affordability, that is in every conversation I have, especially with a lot of conversations in this room, small business owners, families. That is the number one challenge: housing, healthcare, gas, groceries, utilities, transport. I mean, it just adds up and adds up, and that weight has grown really over the last 20, 30 years in the Hudson Valley. So the first package of legislation that I introduced in this new Congress, we're in the 119th Congress, was essentially an affordability agenda. So a few of those bills, I'm not going to go into the details because I'd put everybody to sleep, although I'm happy to talk more about them. A few key ones. Number one, and really central to a lot of us, a bipartisan bill called the Lowering Grocery Prices Act. I introduced that with Mark Molinaro last Congress. Fortunately, he's not down there anymore, but I reintroduced it with Mike Lawler now as my bipartisan partner. That's focused on bringing down food costs, bringing down grocery costs specifically. We introduced an entire housing agenda, and a lot of you have been working on housing affordability for a long time, and we're making strides, but the federal government really needs to step up when it comes to speeding up the construction of housing to bring down costs for everybody, not just families that are lower income families, but middle class, working class housing is the number one issue in our community, and we're pushing really, really hard on that front. Another part of this agenda is the Protecting Social Security Act. Unfortunately, we've seen both to the macro threats to the program in terms of maintaining the funding and the solvency of the program, but also we've seen massive layoffs across the Social Security agency. We've seen an attempt to close one of 2 Social Security offices in our district in Poughkeepsie. It was actually put on the DOGE savings list, meaning they wanted to try to close it. So in the moment we're in, I think it's really important that we protect the solvency of that program, and that's what that bill is about. It actually requires every county in the country to have at least one in-person Social Security office, which is the bare minimum to access the funds that you all pay into and have worked and earned certainly over your lives and your careers. And then the last bill that's part of this agenda is called a very subtle name. It's called the Stopping Pharma Ripoffs and Drug Savings for All Act. It's about bringing down prescription drug prices and making clear that we're all paying a lot more for a lot of things right now, particularly prescription drugs, and there's a small set of people in the country making an awful lot of money while everybody else is paying way too much on those drugs. So that's what that bill is about. Given that is the agenda that we're for and that I'm pushing behind, which is an affordability agenda, it's a really tough moment to see that we're just not meeting. We're just not at all meeting that. And I think a lot of folks who optimistically voted for this president and for this administration focused on lowering costs and affordability, which I think the Democratic Party failed to clearly talk about and have a plan for. I'll say that very directly. The president's just not meeting the moment on that. I mean, I think everybody in this room is feeling it across a bunch of different dimensions. I did a roundtable. Ward was there and Jess was there. We had the chamber leaders from all of our 3 counties. We had Ralph Lorenzo, who owns Tuttletown, Hudson Whiskey, for those of you that know that great business. We had Rick Osofsky from Ronnybrook Farms, one of our great local businesses. We had several diner owners all sitting around talking about, and this was before the tariffs, by the way, before the tariffs, that costs of food and egg prices for the diner owners, massive tariffs that were being threatened actually on the liquor and distilling industry. All of these things were just making it harder and harder and more costly to do business. And then 2 weeks ago, of course, with, I don't even really know how to describe it, sort of the chaos and there's a lot of words I won't say this morning that I think about how those tariffs were introduced and communicated. But we actually we did a congressional debate here in October, I think it was, at the chamber, and I remember that was actually one of the questions in the debate, myself and my opponent: would you support tariffs that then candidate Trump had proposed? And I said they would be devastating to middle class and working class people. They'd be devastating, especially to small businesses. But I did not imagine the level of just lack of any understanding of the impacts. That tariffs are taxes. That's actually what tariffs are. And that unfortunately, as many of you business owners know, when you get an additional tax, it's almost impossible to not pass that on to both your business, but also to your customers and consumers. And so just at the moment where we need to bring costs down, we're punishing lots of people who need economic relief with these tariffs. And so I think it was really important that people spoke out against those. We did see, of course, the president back off a little bit, but we still have, a year ago, the effective tariff rate in the country was 3%. It's now 24%. 24% on all of your costs. That's just not sustainable. So we're going to continue to push back on that. And I do think it's important. I don't think this should be a partisan issue. I think it's important that organizations like the Chamber, to the degree that you're willing and able, just articulate the harm and the impacts on businesses, especially small and medium businesses, for these tariffs. And would love to hear more from you all on that. The second area that I talked about in addition to affordability is safety. Just to briefly talk about this, two big things that I wanted to highlight in terms of proactive things that I'm working on. A lot of you know, a lot of you actually may not know, all of our police agencies, I represent 82 different municipalities, towns, cities, and villages. All of them are relatively small, compared to the rest of the country. Every single one of them is under 150 sworn police officers. When you look at where federal funding goes in terms of law enforcement, like 90% of it goes to a few big departments across in our major cities across the country. So I just introduced bipartisan legislation called the Invest to Protect Act that's specifically about getting more funding, more resources, more support to our law enforcement agencies, smaller and medium ones, including in Saugerties, for example. And so that's a bill that we just introduced that has real bipartisan support, and I think would show an important investment in making sure our communities continue to be safe. The other thing that I wanted to highlight, and I especially want to shout out in terms of seeing you, Carol, and all the great work that you guys do at Ryan. We introduced something called the HALT Fentanyl Act, which is another piece of bipartisan legislation focused on strengthening the punishments for those that might traffic fentanyl, which I think everybody in this room understands how deadly and dangerous that is and how devastating it's been to our community here. So I was actually the one of only 2 Democrats to co-sponsor that, which is embarrassing, frankly, that we couldn't get more folks on that bill. But that actually passed the House of Representatives. We think it's going to pass the Senate, and we expect that the president will sign that. So it's an important win in the midst of a lot of, unfortunately, gridlock on a really important issue. Unfortunately, though, they're in the kind of attempts to drive efficiencies, which I think we can all agree. There are certainly things that we need to tighten up and improve efficiency and look at some of the overspending and waste. But caught in the middle of that have been a lot of things that I think folks might not realize. For example, I had secured over $10 million in funding for all 3 of our county sheriffs in Ulster, Dutchess, and Orange counties. And that got cut out of this latest round of budget. That would have been body cameras in the Orange County Jail, an upgraded radio system for the Ulster County Sheriff's Department, and important new equipment and training for the Dutchess County sheriffs. That was cut out of this latest budget, and I'll just be blunt, most of the cuts that are happening are both adding to our deficit. The latest budget that just passed the House added $6 trillion. I voted against this budget, added $6 trillion to our deficit, and it's likely, and this is coming up now, we're going to see huge tax breaks, largely for very, very high earners. I doubt there's anybody in this room, frankly, who will see the most of that benefit. Most of them are 90 miles south of us here who will see that benefit. And so those are the things that I just think go against pretty fundamentally who we are as a country, which is about helping the middle class, helping small businesses, helping a lot of people in this room. So we're going to continue to push back on those fronts in terms of safety and fighting for those various funding priorities. And then the last thing I just want to talk about, I talked about affordable, safe, and free. I just want to quickly talk about what I mean when I say free. And this is the area that I'm particularly concerned about right now in the country. People in our community, and you all know this, yourself included, are just working so hard and trying to care for their family, provide for their family, and have a little bit of slack financially and otherwise in their lives. And so when we start doing these broad across the board cuts, I'm all for a scalpel. I am not for a sledgehammer when it comes to a lot of the things happening. So I've been asking myself, how can we be free when, for example, Elon Musk can access your social security data, but we here in our own community don't even have a social security office to go to access our own social security data? How is that a free? I just don't think that's what anybody intended. How are we a free country? And this one's very personal to me when we have a growing number of veterans, especially of my generation, post 9/11 veterans, that need care at our VA, along with our Vietnam veterans, and we just had 20 inpatient VA beds at the Castle Point VA, which is our main one here in the Hudson Valley, closed. Not threatened, but closed because of a hiring freeze put in place by this administration. I just don't think that's what anybody voted for, regardless of how they voted. How can we be free and taking care of each other when just last week there were 50% cuts announced to a program called TFAP, which funds our food banks. In the food bank of Hudson Valley, which covers 11 counties, north to south, just got 50% cuts. That's 2 million meals less to families and people in need in my district of 800,000 people. I just don't understand that. Cuts to Head Start, the regional team of Head Start, which provides critical early education and early intervention services to kids. The entire Head Start regional team was just laid off in the Hudson Valley. Again, I try to be a positive, optimistic person, and I am, and it's the only reason I continue to do this job. But I think what we have to do in this moment, and it's hard, is share those harms. Talk about the fact that this is what's happening without judgment, in as apolitical way as possible, as a human way, as much as we can talk to each other as humans, that look, we made these decisions electorally in November, and these are the consequences. I believe that those things I just talked about and a lot of the other harms being done are just go against who we are as a country, certainly go against who we are as a community in Ulster County and in the Hudson Valley. And so, as I said in the beginning, I am certainly going to continue to push back and fight against those. We've done a series of town halls and speak outs and events to elevate the voices of people in our community being harmed, and to the degree that any of you are willing to continue to participate in those, I actually think it's existential that we speak out in this moment. I'm not normally like an activist type of person, but I really think in this moment, this is a term that a lot of organizers use. Don't agonize, organize. There's a lot of agonizing right now, and I understand it, but I think we have to come together as a community, and again, not in a political way. and just say, these are not the things that are benefiting us. And I'm sure some people in the room might not agree with me, and I totally respect and appreciate that. But that's what I'm hearing from folks as I'm having conversations and doing these town halls, that those kind of things go against what the community is really about. So again, I'll wrap there. I'm sorry that was longer than the 10 minutes that I said. I apologize. Happy to open it up for questions. I will bring it on an optimistic note, or my best attempt at that. In the moment we're in, I have seen a lot of people speak up that normally aren't, speaking up at political rallies or events, because they feel similarly to me that if we don't speak up in this moment, we're in real risk as a country. And we're about to hit our 250th anniversary of the United States of America on July 4th, 2026. And I think a lot about why we founded the country in the first place. We had an unaccountable king lording over the country, taxing us without representation. Tariffing, actually, was a big part of the reason that the tariffs were a big part of the reason the revolution initially started. And people said, that's just not how we want to live. And the revolution began. And I think as we approach this 250-year anniversary, I'm not arguing for a revolution, to be clear. If there's any press in the room, I'm not arguing for that. But think about, who are the next generation of our founding mothers and fathers? That's us. Look around. Nobody else is coming to figure this out. That's us. So think about, what can you do? What can we do? That's what I think about a lot. What can each of us be doing to set a good direction for another 250 years in what I think is, and will forever be, the best country ever created in the history of the world. So I invite you all to be part of that, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be with you this morning. Happy to take questions.